Miss LaTonya Story. But LaTonya Story, welcome to Stylists Suite Live.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I always kind of start where was your first passion for sports? We're not even going to talk about PR. Where did you first get passionate about sports?
Well, my first passion for sports was when I was 8 years old. For Halloween, I was a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. And so that's when my lifelong fandom for the Dallas Cowboys took root. And the funny thing is, all of my family are Washington Commanders fans. So when I tell people I was born and raised a Cowboys fan, they always say, by who? Who are you talking about? But ever since I was a little girl, I love the Cowboys. Whenever sports was on, the rule in our house was you either sit down and watch it or go outside and play. And so I just sat there and watched it. And so it was back when it's back in the day, so many years ago, and I've always been a fan.
So LaTonya Story is your married name. What is your maiden name, and where are you from? Where are you born and raised?
Yeah. Well, it's my divorce name. So LaTonya Story was my married name. I'm now divorced 28 years, but my maiden name is LaTonya Porter. I was born in West Virginia. Grew up in a very small town. My grandfather was the town pastor and coal miner. And I moved to Norfolk, Virginia when I was 8 years old. My family was military. And so I grew up in base housing in Norfolk, Virginia.
And yet you pursued public relations.
I've always had.
What was it about public relations?
Well, when I was growing up in school, I was in forensics. I was in the Optimist Club. I won oratory contests. So I've always had a passion for talking. Yeah, do you remember forensics back in the day?
Yes, forensics. Yes.
Yeah. That's old school. Yeah. Well, we used to have to do the speaking competitions and stand in front of people. So I always won. And so I knew I wanted to be a motivational speaker when I was younger. So, but of course, as you get older, your decisions change. But I know I had a knack for talking. So I majored in professional communications and took public relations classes. But I either wanted to teach English or do something with public speaking. So I wouldn't say necessarily I went into college and say, hey, I want to be a publicist. I was taking PR classes as a part of my communications major.
How did you become the publicist that you were studying to be? How did you become it?
Yeah, I always said closed mouth don't get fed. Ever since I was a young girl, I always believed in myself. And so I was driving down the street one day and there was a commercial on our, so the local, I wouldn't say local, but Hampton University would play gospel music in the morning. And so it was 8.1 WHOV.
Nice. Okay, Hampton. Okay, shout out.
Yeah. I went to ODU. Yeah, I went to Old Dominion, but I would listen to Hampton's radio station. But anyway, there was a commercial that ran for the Allen Iverson Celebrity Summer Classic. So this was an annual softball event that Allen Iverson did in Hampton. Now I'm from Norfolk, which is across the water, but they call it the Seven Cities. So Hampton, Newport News, Williamsburg, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Norfolk, all of us. And so the commercial left a phone number. For more information, dial whatever. I called the number, left a message. I get a call back from Alan's manager at the time, Gary Moore. And he invited me out to a volunteer meeting. So when we went out, he went around the table and asked everyone what they did. And again, mind you, this is 23 years ago in 2000. And so, 24 years now. So I raised my hand and I was like, yes, I'm studying public relations and communications at Old Dominion. He said, okay, you're in charge of PR. I was like, oh, no, I don't know it yet. I'm just taking classes. He said, no, you'll figure it out. And I did, And so to be thrown in when Allen Iverson was with the 76ers, the height, who he was. And that particular year, the attendees were Magic Johnson, Kadeem Hardison, Kevin Garnett, which was his rookie year, and like all these, celebrities and athletes. And so I had an opportunity to, work with them. And again, it was a volunteer basis, but back then that's what you had to do, right? And
what were some of the tasks that you were required to do as a volunteer?
To handle media. So I was in charge of media. So that meant doing the press release. And again, the funny thing is I figured out how to do the press release by my textbook from class. So this is the format. This is how you do it. To do a press release, invite the media out, handle the media, getting the guys, set up to do interviews, manage the press conference that we had. And again, I learned all of this on the fly.
Of course, as you're going along, but with huge talent, huge talent. And then you're just thrown into it. And again, I'm in my 20s, I'm excited. You're fearless. You don't even know that you don't know what you don't know. And I was just so happy to do it and just energetic. But that was really how I got into the industry. But the second year, and again, I closed mouth don't get fed. I went and got business cards done, came up with a business name, which is my name, LPS, which was my initials, LPS Consulting. But then when I went down to in the city, you had to go through this book to see which names were available for you to have a business name. So you had to flip through the book. But then when we went through the registry, there was already a company called LPS Consulting. So I couldn't use that. So I had to add LPS Consulting PR. So I did that, got brochures done, registered my business, got an EIN number. And again, I Googled this to figure out how to do it. And then I didn't know anything. But again, I did not know this was entrepreneur. I just said, I'm just going to do it. And then so the following year, the second summer, I would hand out my business cards and brochures to the athletes. If you need a publicist, here's my information. And so I handed it to one athlete who was Aaron Brooks. He was the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints at the time, the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, but he was also from Newport News, from the area. And so he looked at my card, he's like, okay. But then later on, I saw him standing outside of this room where the refreshments and food was. And I said, hey, do you want a plate? He was like, you don't mind making it? I was like, no, I'm going to make a plate, hand it back to him. And he said, what was your name again? I said, LaTonya Story. So he said, just meet me, later on and we can talk. Long story short, he became my first paid client. And that was how I got started. Make a plate, girl, for making a plate. Look.
You have to be of service. That's
such a great tip. That's such a great tip. Right there.
Yeah, right there.
Kind of fast forward, give me a list of all of the people that you represent. And what's the biggest takeaway when you're dealing with really talent of such an extreme volume? You're not necessarily pitching, you're kind of managing. What are your takeaways?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say one quick story because how I really got into the NFL and started to get the type of clients that I received. The following year, the Super Bowl was in New Orleans. And we used to get information in the mail about different events. So one of the events, they had like a little small blurb, was the Marshall Falk Celebrity Golf Tournament. And then there was a name and number. And you know me, if there's a number, I'm going to call it.
Yes.
So I called the number and I spoke with Jennifer Weber, who is the executive director of the Marshall Falk Foundation. So I said, hey, my name is LaTonya Story. I represent Aaron Brooks. Do you need any help with media? And I said, I understand the New Orleans media. She said, yes, we need a media coordinator. She said, I could only pay you $500, but we'll take care of your hotel, and you can go to some of the events with us.
Wow.
I said, great. That year, and that's where I met Emmett Smith, who I know today, Emmett Smith, Wani Lott, Marcus Allen, Eric Dickerson, all of them were golfers at this golf event. Jerome Bettis, everyone. I go with them to this event, and there's a lady who sees me, and she says, because again, it wasn't a lot of black, young girls running around. And she said, "Who are you? What are you doing?" I said, "My name is LaTonya." And I just said, I can call myself a publicist. "My name is LaTonya Story. I'm a publicist." She said, "My husband and Mr. McNabb need help." I'm like, "Oh, who is your husband?" I know who Mr. McNabb is. And so her husband was Mr. Smith. It was Achilles Smith's father. Achilles Smith was the number 2 pick of in the draft with the Cincinnati Bengals, who was the quarterback. Him and Mr. McNabb, Donovan McNabb's dad, had started the National Football Players Fathers Association, and they needed a publicist. Mind you, I did not know either one of them. I go to one of the events that Jennifer took me with, and I saw Mr. McNabb and Mama McNabb in VIP. Again, a closed mouth don't get fed. I walked my hind parts right over there, stuck up my hand, introduced myself. I said, "My name is LaTonya Story, and I heard that you need help. Here's my card." 3 months later, he emailed me, "If you're the young lady who I met, give me a call." They were my client for 11 years. And because of that, I would meet other athletes. And then that's how I started to, accumulate actual players. Even though I didn't represent Donovan, I represented his dad. But being around them, other players would watch me and see me. And that's how I, started to build up my clientele. But to your question, so over the past 23 years, I have had the opportunity.
That's an amazing story, by the way. I had to write down some insight on how you went through the nonprofit you went through the nonprofit route, and you also had enough balls to walk directly to the people and say, this is what I can provide for you because I know this is what you need.
Exactly. A closed mouth don't get fed, and you have to be, and even as women, one thing we have to learn, you have to be assertive, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You have to put yourself out there, and you just can't expect things to come to you. And then that's the power of networking. And again, I may not have known the word networking back then, but that's what I was doing. And so over the past 23 years, I've been able, to work with Michael Vick. And one thing, I've always wanted to work with Michael Vick. He's from my area. He's from Hampton Roads. I didn't get a chance to work with him when he was playing in the league, but my cousin worked with him, and he did some business with him. And right when Mike was about to retire, he said, "Hey, Mike needs a publicist for this football camp." It was only a 3-month camp. And I was like, "I'm gonna make it the best camp ever," right? This was just a few years ago, right before he retired. And so, because I always wanted to work with him. So we did, like a local camp in these different markets, but I would invite national media. And Mike was like, "LaTonya, this is just a camp." He was like, "Nobody wants to cover the camp." Oh, yes, they did. It's Michael Vick. And so it was so much fun. So just after 3 months, he loved what I did. He ended up hiring me. He announced his retirement and started his broadcast career at Fox Sports. And I was his publicist for 6 years.
Were you a part of kind of making that opportunity happen for him? Is that what publicists do regarding talent?
No, I didn't, because I had actually pitched him for an in-studio interview. But they had already, his agent had already been in the works talking to them, on the broadcast side. I had pitched him for in studio to do an interview, and so they were able to see, how he was, and he's a great conversationalist. He's a great talker, and one thing I can say about Michael, his memory. He can break down any play from college to high school, and he can remember every detail. And I always found that fascinating. So, I would say that was the highlight, because it was always a dream to work with him. And I took an opportunity that was supposed to be a 3-month assignment and turned it into 6 years. But
I love that you have these really extended. That's really how you were really seamlessly to retire and go into your second phase.
Yeah,
it's because of these long-term relationships.
Yes.
Give some advice on how you had a 6-year contract, 11-year contract. How have you been able to do that?
I just do my job. And the great thing about being a publicist is that you have to know the media. And so, people are like, "Hey, I want to be a publicist. I want to do that." if you don't have relationships with the media, then that doesn't help, right?
So yeah, they don't get it. Yeah, they don't get
it. You know what I'm saying? So you have to know, and you have to know who to pitch. You have to have a pitch.
How to pitch.
How to pitch.
Yeah.
And for me, because I'm working with athletes, you need to know the people. You need to know the talent bookers and the reporters at ESPN, at Fox, at Sports Illustrated, at Yahoo Sports. And, you know, and then as we moved into the digital age, Boardroom and all these other platforms. But you have to have relationships with reporters to be able to pitch your clients. And so because I've been able to pitch my clients and get national or local or regional coverage for them, that has sustained my longevity. But our business kind of morphed, and so I started to do marketing as well, because my clients, most of them, they really didn't need PR because they were who they were, but they also were like, okay, how can I find a way to make extra income? And so I learned how to pitch my clients for sponsorships, for brand partnerships, for deals. And so that also extended, my career in the sports industry as well.
I have to ask, because you started with the question of kind of making a plate, right? You have to do service. Has there ever been a point where your service have been overextended, or you've given too much, or you feel like too much is required in regards to demand, talent that's really demanding, or talent that has a lot of notoriety?
I can honestly say no. For me, because I've always made myself of service. I never, even though I've done tasks that may not necessarily been public relations or publicist duties, it's easier for my client to make one call than many calls, right? So if they need, a room booked, or they need this, or I want to get to this event, or, even if it's something that didn't really have anything to do with me, I didn't mind doing it, because again, it's making myself, invaluable to my client. And that was just a part of the job. I never separated it. So I don't know if that's good or bad. But just growing up the way I did in the industry, you just kind of just did everything. And it also built trust amongst your client and yourself.
Because you have made the transition, you are now retired. You're saying you are retired. Why? You didn't really have to. Why did you decide to retire from PR?
You know what? I think it was two reasons. On the professional side, I just think it was time. I was getting older. I turned 51 this past year, and you're just looking around, and the industry has changed. Most of my clients, they're now retired, and I just didn't have the energy to want to, start working with rookies and young people, and I'm just tired. So I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to do it. Yeah, it takes a lot. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I love the clients. So even when I retired, I had clients, you know what I mean? So, but I love the clients I was working with, but I knew that God had something else for me. I was working with Monica McNutt from ESPN, Brian Hutson from ESPN, two people who I adore so much. And so that was really hard. But I knew God was calling me in another direction. And on the personal side, my son passed away in 2019 from cancer. He was misdiagnosed. Thank you. He was 30 years old. And so it did. And he was 30 years old. And I had never, ever thought about any of my children passing away. I never had a thought of it. And because he died so suddenly and unexpectedly, that really, jolted me and my family and, my other son and daughter. And so that kind of changed how I viewed life, how I viewed business. And even though it took a couple more years after that, before I retired, I knew that God was calling me, to something else.
Tell me about this something else.
Yeah. So it was a couple of something else's, and it's funny because people said, you announced your retirement, but you're still busy. So in 2019,
does retirement look different for everybody?
It does. I'm retired from represented talent, so I should say it that way. But I started an event, and Yeah, I started an event in 2019 called the Sports Power Brunch. It's an annual sports awards event that honors women in sports, and it's held in each Super Bowl host city. The first one we did when the Super Bowl was here in Atlanta, maybe it was about over like 100 people attended, and now we're going into our 6th year coming up in New Orleans, and it's sold out. We have over 400 attendees. You can't get in. As soon as I put the tickets on sale, we sell out, and I'm just so blessed and fortunate to be able to create something else and to again be of service and honor women who I admire in sports for that. But then I also started a foundation for my son. His name is Sterling, called the Sterling Legacy Fund. And with that, our mission is to help with educate with healthcare disparities, education and recreational facilities, for youth and young people. Again, I mentioned earlier that he was misdiagnosed. He went to the doctor. They said he had sciatica, which isn't fatal. But 2 days before Christmas, his dad went upstairs and found him passed away in the bed. We didn't find out until his autopsy a couple months later. He had malignant lymphoma. So this entire time, my son was walking around with cancer, dying, and we didn't know. And so one of the things, that I took from that, and that I incorporate now in his foundation as I talk to other people, is that when we go to the doctor, something doesn't feel right, doesn't seem right, or what they're saying doesn't sound right, we need to ask for a second opinion. We need to ask for a patient advocate. And one of the things that I took from this that I think we were robbed from is, even if the doctors would have told us there's nothing else that they could do, we would have been able to prepare ourselves and prepare him, for his transition. And so, now I've been able to donate money to the American Cancer Society. We did over $25,000 to the American Cancer Society. Then I did a $10,000 grant to Hampton University Proton and Cancer Institute this year for their student internship program. And now we have something we're going to announce coming soon. We're doing a partnership where we're going to help students going through the Step Up program. And the Step Up program helps students who are going to medical school to, practice their MCAT. And other tests that they have to do. And so we're going to be able to, have funding for that. And then to be able to hopefully see them through medical school. So that way we can have more compassionate, culturally competent healthcare providers in the ecosystem of healthcare. And lastly, one of the things that my son loved to do when he was growing up was play basketball. So if you saw Sterling, you saw basketball. He was a big Allen Iverson fan. So it was like everything was full circle. Even when he passed away at 30, he still had an Allen Iverson fat head on his wall. And so I've been able to pledge for the next 3 Super Bowls that we're building the Sterling Courts in each Super Bowl host city. The first one we did was in Las Vegas at the Downtown Boys and Girls Club. And so we have a Sterling Courts there. Microsoft came in and then they donated a computer lab. And so they rehauled a computer lab and esports gaming center at that location. And we're going to do the same thing in New Orleans at the Lions Recreation Center in New Orleans in February. And then after New Orleans, it's going to be San Francisco. And then we'll finish up in LA in 2027 with the Sterling Courts project.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
And I'm sure all of these accomplishments have been because of your 20 plus years in public relations and all of those really great relationships that you've had.
Yes.
You are definitely tapping into. How do you decide? I mean, I know a lot of things are still coming your way. You're on the other side now. Help me with this. We want to do this. How do we do this? How do you decide what to participate in, what not to?
I've been asked several times to come out of retirement, and I just have to say no. And again, you have to choose yourself. And so for me, I just know that because it's so easy to go back, because then if you're a publicist, you're always a publicist, and and I'm like, well, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do. I'm like, then you feel yourself getting into it, and so that's what I don't want to do. But so now I just refer out. So if someone is looking for representation, I will refer them to another colleague in the industry. A couple of things to connect with the Sterling Legacy Fund is sterlinglegacyfund.org. To find out information about the Sports Power Brunch, it's sportspowerbrunch.com. For me, my website is lpsconsultingpr.com, and you can follow me on social, on X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, Threads, at LaTonya Story.
LaTonya Story. And you're in some really fabulous Facebook groups as well. You still stay with us through Facebook.
Yes, and I'm on Facebook too. I have a private, personal one, but I have a public LaTonya Story page. So,
Thank you, LaTonya. You are amazing. I gotta make sure I stay connected with you. I did not know. I'm so glad I had an opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, you too, and thank you so much for your style suite. I make sure that I purchase it, and it's really been good to go through it. I love the layout, and I don't know if you're going to do this, but if you ever print an edition, like, I can just see this being a hardback or a coffee table, because the way you lay it out.
I'm gonna send it to you. It's not as thick. Hold on, let me see if I get it. Hold on.
Okay.
I think I might have it in my bag. I don't know if I took it out. Damn, I took it out. But I got a couple printed. I'll send something to you. I'll shoot you an email and get your information. I'll
send you my address. Yes, that would be great. But no, I really love it, and I love how you have it broken down by industry, by the companies. It's just really been great. How you send the update when someone leaves. When people listen. I'm a fan. I get it. So
I need to interject a sports. I haven't done. It's so much. Oh my God.
I think you should. I think you should. Like, if you do a sports one, because again, a lot of people don't know what media to reach out to, and then people leave, and some people, and again, with us from back in the day, you had to do your own research. You had to, and here's the thing, you had the magazines, you look at the masthead, and then this is before we had all of those the social media stuff, but you had to really try to find where people are. And now that you have the internet and social media, sometimes if people actually look, you can find everything you need. You know what I mean? So if you're looking for a writer for Wall Street Journal, a sports edition, most of the time they'll put their email address, whether it's in their bio on their social media, if it's on their LinkedIn, if it's on their website. But I think young people now need to do the work instead of just putting out, hey, can you give me somebody's email address? No. Because it helps you.
But even if they have the email address, they don't even know what to say. Yeah, they don't know
exactly. Yeah. So if you do a sports edition, I think it will go off well. And so you can put in, our different groups that we're a part of. It would be fantastic. It's gonna fly off the shelf.
I'll definitely add. And I will make sure I get the Big Fat Media Guide to you. Just because you said you wanted to print a copy, I'll make sure I get it to you.
Yes. So